a time we were told all good things come in small packages. Now we're more often told big is better, upsize your fries, increase your credit card limit. But size can bring distance. Do we risk losing sight of our members in the process? We asked around, and while some people thought there were economies of scale, just as many considered the diseconomies of scale.
Look, I'm not sure whether big is better or big is beautiful, but I think big is cheaper, and I think that that's been one of the driving forces of the funds looking at evaluating their benefit and product offering.
Big can be better. I think funds have got a major challenge, and that is to keep their costs down.
The bigger and the more money you get under management, the better services you can deliver at a most reasonable cost. I'm not sure where the sort of break-even points come, but I would also wonder whether or not if you just get too big, you start to lose some of those advantages.
I don't think that there will be a disappearing of small funds, but I think good big funds, well run, obviously have a place as well. I just don't think it's an either-or situation.
In the next few years we're going to see a bigger industry, we're going to have fewer numbers of funds, which means we're going to get some really mega funds.
I think the nature of superannuation and the way it's structured means that the nature of costs are reduced as a result of getting larger, and that's just something that is a reality.
When we look at the question of scale, we know it's very controversial. Big funds tell us it makes them stronger, small fund tells us it makes them more responsive. But is it just about size or what you do with that size? Is being big a goal in itself, or is it what you do with that bigness? If I drop dead right now, the takeaway I want you to walk out of that room with is scale in itself is not the goal, but you need resources to do things, and if scale helps you build those resources, then you can do great things for your membership. But the challenge is always going to be hang on to what made you strong, and what makes the not-for-profit sector strong is their connection with their community of members. So it doesn't matter what you do, you can never ever let go of that. And even the retail funds are talking about connections with their customers and so on. So it's really important that we hang on to what makes us strong. But as we get big, do members actually care about the fact that we're big? Sometimes we get excited as an industry about things, and when we talk to members through our Selecting Super website, and when they ring us up and ask us about different funds and different things, I don't have too many people saying, hey, my fund is really big, it's fantastic. They get excited about how the fund answers their phone calls, replies to their emails, sends them the information when they ask for it, gives them a good rate of return, has an insurance package they can get their head around. If a fund is big and can do that, yeah, that's cool. Is it small? That's cool too. But despite the emotion, the fact is funds are consolidating, as most of us recognise. The keeping up with the market costs money and resources, and one way to get those resources is through scale. And if you can't build your own scale, you need partners who can lend it to you. We'll often say to funds, you don't necessarily need to be big yourself, but you need big friends. And you can get that through your administration, you can get that through strategic partnerships. But what is the evidence the scale itself makes members better off? To try and answer this, the AAST and CMSF asked us to conduct a study. I have to confess, however, I expected the answer to be that scale would have no clear impacts. We have a highlights screen in front of you. As what we've tried to highlight is scale has advantages. Those advantages were found in the four main parameters: performance, fees, extras and administration. In performance, bigger funds were more likely to be top quartile, while in 3 of the last 5 years, crediting rate averages tilted up as funds got bigger. In fees, total expense ratios came down as the fund size slid upwards. In insurance, bigger funds through bigger membership bases, we found that larger funds were able to offer more services. And even in administration, and this is one that really did surprise me, even in administration, measured by service standards, bigger funds were found to get better deals and even higher performance thresholds. I've got to put a plug in for the administration industry, because there wouldn't be too many parts of any industry where their performance benchmark is 100%. The study focused on 80 industry funds and public sector funds. Crediting rates and administration data for funds using external administration, so I've got to say I'm talking about external administration here. And as you can see, the study was heavily weighted towards industry funds. When we talk about scale, we've got to start talking about consolidation. Consolidation is king in this industry. FUM growth rates for all funds, intriguingly, were quite similar across all the size segments. There's more of these charts in the actual report itself. But a mega fund growing 20% drives more dollars than a micro fund. The result is money shifting east to the mega funds and market clout of the rest naturally sliding down, as you can see in the graph there. Funds of $1 to $5 billion, those, if you like, the lower end of the mid-range, are the most popular, but their market clout has come down 1/3 over the last few years. Small or sub $1 billion funds are shrinking. The mega funds are up sixfold. Admittedly, that's from 1 to 6 over the last 4 years of the study. But the segment growing members are the mega funds, reinforcing the funds under management story. Equally, this suggests if you want membership scale, so there are some things where members drive the scale, not the dollars, then perhaps an acquisition or a merger strategy might be your best bet. Average crediting rates for funds generally increase by more than 0.5% as funds jump to size category. I'm talking about the average returns from the default investment choices. But analysing separately by member size, the trend is even stronger. Menu size, however, there was no real trend at all. In fact, once funds got to about $3 to $4 billion, we tended to find the size of their menu stabilised. What I think is a much more fascinating way to look at performance is not so much in the segment averages, but we developed a highly scientific term called the top quartile strike rate. The top quartile strike rate is the likelihood a fund in a particular segment made the top quartile. For example, if there are 6 mega funds and 2 are in the top quartile, that's a strike rate of 1/3. The chart on the left there, shows that funds of less than $1 billion have a strike rate that's about half that for the big funds. The threshold there seemed to be funds below $1 billion and when funds got above $1 billion. It, however, shows that the mega fund rate was lower than for the mid-range funds. But only 6 mega funds means that one player dropping the ball can cost the whole team, and this is what happened. There was actually a large public sector fund, had some low returns in there, and that sort of upset the team. But the key message is that the real battle befalls the micro funds. Averages are one thing though, actual league table results are quite something else. Big fund averages and strike rates don't mean smaller funds won't make the first grade team, but it just tells us they are less likely to. Importantly, when we look at the top end of the table, we're talking about who made the cut, we're not talking about who didn't make the cut. And this is why segment averages and strike rate figures can actually tell us a lot. Fees. Fees measured by the total expense ratio, and I've got to admit that I actually think this is the most important fee measure out there because we're trying to bring all the fees together into one single figure. Entry fees, membership fees, running costs, investment charges, ongoing administration charges, depending how the fund structures themselves. Custodial, trustee fees, all that sort of stuff. The largest funds are found to offer deals that were 1/3 better than the smallest fund. 1% plays 0.6. Now, even if you've got a fund charging 1%, it's still an unbelievably low fee. So I don't actually think that's a negative so much. But the analysis also showed 2/3 of funds have increased fees over the last financial year, being 2005-2006. Our analysis showed that while public offer industry funds showed a scale effect for membership fees, across all funds the effect was less clear. So when we looked at what I'm saying there, when we looked at membership fees in themselves, we didn't find a very clear scale relationship, probably because we're bringing in too many different types of funds. But if we looked at public offer industry funds, we did find that membership fees tended to go down as the fund got larger. Membership fees can be very powerful, but it's actually not the main fee members are paying. In fact, it's no mystery why that even some of the more expensive retail platforms don't even have membership fees at all, because they've realised that the main fee is the asset-based charge. And so that's where they're putting all their fees. Anyway, as funds are moving towards much more sophisticated investments, a natural result of that is their investment fees have to go up, and we found that they jumped by about 0.1%, 0.5 to 0.6. This, I think, is an interesting picture in terms of fees. If a fund has to lift their fees, the scale impact is clear that big funds have the clout to limit the size of that fee jump. So if they've come to a decision that we have to increase our fees for our members, well, because we're big, we don't have to increase. That increase doesn't have to be as big as it otherwise would. Investment fees are also 1.5 times more likely to jump than member fees, sort of reinforcing the fact that as the investment process is getting more complicated, we're seeing that come through much more quickly than we're seeing it come through on the administration side. But it's probably because funds are working as hard as they possibly can to keep member fees down. In fact, there's some conversations I have with some industry funds over the years, and they would say that they hung on as far as they possibly could to keep the member fees as tight as a drum, and then they increased them from $1 to $1.10, and they found no one really cared. Big picture with extra benefits offered by super funds is funds offer more and better services than ever. And the move to offering more funds is on with a vengeance. For example, the proportion of funds offering EFT transactions has jumped from 10 to 71% in the last 3 years. The proportion offering financial planning or allocated pensions has jumped from 30 to 75%. 82% offer spouse accounts, 84% offer death-only insurance in addition to the regular insurance, 90% do online account access. In fact, if you thought super funds were only about super, then it's time you woke up. You're actually in the financial institution business and super was just your entry ticket. But bigger funds are pushing even harder, as the chart here illustrates. What the chart is showing is the number of services that funds are doing, and you can see it slides up as the membership base slides up. The best big funds are better than the best smaller funds, but equally a really good medium fund is better than a bad big fund. Size cuts in as the incidence of, say, income protection. It jumps from 60 to 80% as funds get larger. The incidence of financial planning jumps from 70 to 95% as funds get larger. One thing I've got to say with these extra services, do funds offer too many silly services? I would say that there's really not much evidence of that. And let's have a look at administration. Not only are funds under the pump to keep fees as tight as a drum, they have to develop new services, deliver them faster, cross channels, technology, lead innovation, all while operating in a tighter compliance regime where funds are in more open competition than ever. And if that isn't enough to make superannuation funds and their administrators' hair fall out, they benchmark to meet their processing targets 100% of the time. Reinforcing the priorities aspect, the super partners data also shows us that while bigger funds generally get 100% performance targets, smaller funds are looking at 98%. It might only be a 2% difference, but it's still a difference. So I might leave it there, and I'm more than happy to take questions.